Number one, it has almost costed me everything to sit down here and tell me everything. Sometimes you just gotta say fuck it and tell it. And I'm here and I'm telling it. Before I tell you this story, number one, I don't care. Number two, don't come for me. Number three, I don't give a fuck. Um, I always wanted to, I'd say, be the best version of myself and make my dad proud. That has always been my goal in life, even before everything else that happened. And I always used to admire the way other people are loved and treasured by their parents and how like they really mattered to their parents in a way that, the way a child go. Actually, I've read so many philosophies about kids, so many books about children and how to raise a child and, how to heal yourself, how to heal your inner child and how to disconnect from, repetitive cycles and patterns of abuse. Could be verbal, physical, could be subliminal abuse, and being a pain body or living a life where you're walking on eggshells in a way that you always have to do right so that you don't annoy this one, you don't piss off this one, because if you piss them off, they'll either let you go or they'll kick you out or they'll stop support. And the biggest fear I always had as a child was to find myself alone. And I think there's so many things, but yeah, but back to the story. I've always wanted to, be the best version of myself and ensure that I represent people that matter to me in the best light possible. And pursuing journalism and being a broadcast journalist was always the bomb diggity for me. And how my dream of being a broadcast journalist was actually, I'd say, sharpened was when I joined Fountain Gate School. I joined Fountain Gate School in fourth grade, and this is what happened. I didn't grow up in a household where we had TV, like a TV set, and you'd sit down and you'd watch different programs. But somewhere along the lines, I lived in households where they had TVs and they had, a radio, and I had to actually, once or twice, sneak in and watch some 1, 2, 3 shows. But when I joined Fountain Gate School in a boarding school program in an academy, what happened before was that it was some sort of like an intervention, so to say. An intervention meaning that I was just living in the village. I was just an ordinary kid like, everybody else. My work was to take care of, cows and the rest. So the reason why I'm calling it an intervention, there was need for me to move to a better school so that I turn out better. And Fountain Gate was the choice. And interestingly, it just so happened that I was the only student in the boarding program in my stream. And the reason why that happened is because when I joined the school, there wasn't a program that was being offered for, you'd say, especially in my stream, for boarding school students that time, because they believed it was a little bit, the students in that program were younger. I mean, who, but yeah, I've met so many people who were taken to boarding school like in class 3, in class 4, or in third grade and fourth grade. And that's what actually happened. So I had to join boarding school in fourth grade, and they had to reserve a special program for me because also, like I said, it was some sort of like an intervention. I was moving from, my grandmother's, transitioning from my grandmother's to now a better life, so to say. Like I've called it an intervention in a boarding school program where I had to now, receive good life training, get exposed to, people that come from different cultures and stable families and whatnot. But the question for me was always, you know, because when that transition was happening from my grandmother's in the village to now an urban area to an academy, my mom was not in the picture, so to say. And my aunties were the ones who are now taking care of me. Those were my dad's sisters. So the decision and the choice was I was to either live in the house, in the houses or in the house of my aunties and go to and be a day in the day school program or stay in boarding school. But the battle in my mind and some of the questions I used to ask myself were, why can't they just take me in? Why can't they just, why, like everybody else in my program, in the boarding program, everybody was actually, going home during evening, after uh, classes are done during, the evening programs and whatnot. So I used to question, like, why can't I just be taken in? Why can't I just be accepted just like everybody else? And so I successfully went to the boarding school, but now the dream was always to be a journalist. So during my stint at the school, uh, there was a lot of pressure. I'd say there's a lot of pressure to fit in. I was insecure. I wasn't a confident kid. I wasn't that confident about myself. I didn't know how to express myself, I'd say. Um, I had this fear in me that I just didn't know how to process and, because of course I'm coming from the village and I don't speak better English than them. There was a culture shock, so to say. And so it took me quite a bit of time. But during our class sessions, the teachers would come in and they'd introduce me very often. But I think a little bit the alienating part was I was the only student in the boarding program, right? So I had to be constantly introduced. Hi, this is Brian. He's the boarding school your section. What 1, 2, 3, wahala yada yada. And that actually brought a lot of attention on me. But as time went by, I got ingratiated into the education system and I just became like everybody else. So my dream of becoming a journalist started being birthed in fifth grade, I'd say. And this is because teachers would come, during the class sessions and they'd pick on me to, like, not pick on me in a way that you're taunting someone, but they choose me to like read poems. And after I got, my confidence back and got, ingratiated into the system, I became I became literally the representative of the entertainment part where, during we always had dancing sessions. We always had the music department. Was it the music department or the talent, department? So I'd dance, I'd recite poems, I'd write, compositions, and all my stories would just be interesting. And that gave me a lot of attention, but it also exposed me in a sense that there's also a lot of bullying. I remember there's one of the teachers who would call me a monkey. If do you guys remember Mr. Davis? Hey, he had so many names for me, bro. He had so many names for me. I always felt like it was extremely personal, bro. He used to call me a monkey. There's another one who used to call me a blackout. And then to make it now sadder, I was the only student in the boarding program. So everybody else would leave for home and I just remained. I remained and transitioned to the boarding area. So I say that also made me a little bit vulnerable to, whatever happened. And, so from there, teachers would come to class very often and just pick on me to recite a poem, to recite a line, to say something, to dance, to present. And I think I gained a name. And they gave me a name, Brian the presenter. Yes, Brian the presenter. So that's how I actually got, this thing of becoming a journalist. So when it came time for me to join high school, I was actually heartbroken by the grade I got in primary school because I knew I'd get maybe one of the biggest or the highest because I had put in a lot of work and some of the things I had been through. I didn't expect less. I expected more. So I was extremely disappointed and heartbroken in myself, and I was ashamed. I always continuously felt like I'd never made my dad proud. Okay, that's something I always felt like I didn't. But over time, it's life and it happens. So when my time came to join high school, things changed. I'd say life took a little bit of a different turn, and I also was disappointed because I didn't expect that during the high school I joined. I expected that, I'll go to, you know, but of course the grade you get is what will help you to get, to whatever school. That because I think things in the academic curriculum and calendar right now have changed in a way that you could get this grade and, they could work around the logistics of it and you find yourself at a different school. So the transition to high school was seamless, I'd say, but that's not the school I wanted to join. And so now I go through high school. There's a lot of disappointing moments. And, I'd say I was always an angry child. I was always an angry child, a heartbroken child. I always had this endless many questions. I was always angry. I was always angry as a child, but I didn't know how to process it and channel it. And plus, I had so many questions. And I used to ask myself, why can't my mom just come and take me in? Why am I living from one auntie's place to another? And it always just felt like, they were doing me a favor. And deep down, I always felt like I was a burden child. I was always a burden child, for sure, for sure, for sure. Until I became a full-blown adult, I always felt like I was a burden to my aunties. And sometimes there are moments where that prominently and loudly it came out. Like it always just, looked like they were doing me a favor. I was a burden to them. And some of the things that I'll actually say later, just, I'd say, validated it, so to say, for lack of a better word. But yeah, so I got through high school. So many things happened in between. We finished high school, and it's time for us to join, college. So I was stuck and caught up between a rock and a hard place because the grade that I got as well after going through high school, I was extremely disappointed and heartbroken because I didn't expect that that's the grade I'd get. But something also happened to me during the KCSE time. I became sick, like just a day before the KCSE. I got a body infection that I had, so like I got sores all over my body, bro. It started off like just some sort itchy rash, and then it broke out into a whole, like my face was so I couldn't sit, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat for my whole entire stint through the final exams in high school. But I successfully sustained it and went through it, and I finished. I'm not using that as a reason maybe why I got the grade I got, but I was also stunned. Like, what is this? I couldn't sit well, I couldn't sleep well, I couldn't eat. And I went through successfully in high school, so I did my exams. The grade came out, and it's time for me to join university. And now I think that's when hell broke loose, for sure, for sure, for sure. That's when hell broke loose. So my transition to university, it's something I was praying to God to help me. Like I just wanted to be a presenter. I wanted to be a radio and a television presenter. But it just so happened that we didn't have a television. We had a radio, yes. We had a radio, but I didn't have the freedom of listening to radio so that I get to, I'll say, sharpen the passion and, um, you know, unleash that journalistic, a version of me that I wanted to be. So I'd sneaking in and out to listen to radio without the permission of the house handlers. And that would create a lot of trouble in the house. Like it was chaos. It was traumatizing chaos, I'd say. And eventually I managed to convince my dad that I have to be a journalist. And so it wasn't an easy decision because also basing off of on what was happening in the house and the things that were happening within my environment, it wasn't such an easy decision to convince my dad that I just want to go become a broadcast journalist and work in radio and television. It was not an easy decision or choice to make. It took quite a bit of time. But interestingly, when I told that to my dad, because I remember I was just sitting on the table, on the dining table, going through the Daily Nation, and there was an advertisement from Multimedia University, and they had advertised that they have an intake where they're, taking in students who want to pursue broadcast journalism from diploma, degree, and even masters. And so I showed it to my dad, And my dad is like, okay, so how much are they taking for, per semester? Da, 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 da. They had listed everything on there. And we sent the application. So I think the application was just to send a copy of the result slip and a letter saying that, you know what, you're applying to be a student at the uni. So we sent it. I think it was sent on Thursday or Wednesday. And the response was given on Friday of the same week. And then I was told that I have to join the following week. So guys, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this part one, and then I'm gonna give a part two later because I have to actually take a break because I feel overwhelmed. I feel overwhelmed. I have to take a break. I have to take a break. I feel overwhelmed. I feel overwhelmed. Oh.